Here we go. So, Future City Catapult. How many people know what the Future City Catapult is, or what the catapults are? A couple. Excellent. That's what we do. So we're here to make cities better. The interesting thing is, I've been doing future cities or smart cities for about 7 years. And the UK is the only country in the world that I know of that sees smart cities, future cities, whatever you want to call it, because it doesn't really matter, as an export market. And in fact, we are put in place, the catapults are put in place to address market failure in a particular space. Our job is to work with the private sector to help the private sector create the right value propositions to address or actually sell into the future city market, both in the UK and globally. That's what we do. And of course, what we actually do within that is we have to work with cities to find out exactly what cities are attempting to do. But I must admit, cities is possibly a misnomer because in fact there are lots of different areas you can actually take this sort of thinking and use it. Whether it's large-scale hospital complexes, university campuses, ports, airports, large shopping malls, residential developments, it's all sort of coalescing around the IoT piece of the conversation. So although we always talk about cities, it's city regions, it's areas in cities, it's all sorts of things. And on a global scale, you've actually got greenfield cities such as China and India and Saudi Arabia. You've also got areas within cities. You've got retrofit within existing cities. So it's much bigger than just talking about cities. Also, the Catapult, when I joined this, I thought we were UK focused, and in fact we're not. So we work across 4 continents. We're working in Chile, Mexico, Brazil. We're on our 4th contract in the Gulf with Dubai. We also got a proposal going with Sharjah. We work in India. We're actually developing the Smart City Innovation Center for the whole of India in Pune. And we're also working with a development in Kolkata. We're also working in China. So basically, it is totally international. And one of our jobs is to actually help companies export into those market areas. So we're UK. We're roughly in about 12 cities in the UK, but in fact, we're global. This is what we do. This is what I love about it, in fact, because basically, we've got a whole weird bunch of people. So I have worked in academia, I've worked in IT industry, I've worked in government, I was a head of economic development in local government as well. And the last local government I worked in, I used to have 150 staff in the economic development area, and when I go and see that same unit now, they've got 30. So the capacity has gone in local government to basically be able to conjure with these sort of wicked areas. So what I love to describe the Catapult is we are the one-eyed man in the land and the blind. We actually know just that little bit more than most in a completely immature market and doing some really weird stuff. And we have all these people. So we have insights, so we have anthropologists, we have ethnographers, we have data scientists, we have urban designers, we have straightforward techies. And the idea is you can take that incredibly gifted group of people, almost like a flash drive, and stick it into an organization. And that's how it works. We go in there and we stick this incredible human capital into it to make it work better. You've seen the building. It apparently was a workhouse. I actually believe it was a workhouse because the windows are too damn big. You wouldn't have big windows in a workhouse, would you, back in the old Victorian times? But there you go. We have a number of resident innovators. Rockefeller have just moved out because they're going to a bigger space. So there's a space if anybody's interested. What I love about it is we have about 2 or 3 immermissions every week. So we have the Manis, I think, next week. We have the Koreans. We have all sorts of folk coming through on a continuous basis. And everybody who comes to here wants to build one of these wherever in their own country. I must say there are 9, I think it's 9 catapults. There's lots and lots of different catapults, but we are the Future Cities Catapult. This is what we concentrate on. I love putting this up because having been in this market for ages, there are 5 barriers. Basically, there's no leadership, no scale, no models, no customer, no trust. So it's got to get better from that point, surely to God. I put this up because every smart city thing I ever go to, it's sort of you walk out, everything seems to be fine, it's all fine and dandy. All I got to do is walk out of here, walk into the next city, and someone's going to buy my stuff. It's not. It's still a kind of an immature market area, and I really believe there's not so much of a supply failure, but there is definitely a demand side failure in the fact of the customer. Where the hell is the customer? I once did a smart city workshop down in South Africa, and it wasn't so much the cities I was talking to afterwards, it was the mining industry. It was Kruger, Rio Tinto, people who had sort of 100,000 people compounds, and they could actually take this thinking and put it into their compounds area. So finding that customer part of this is the most difficult part of the whole conversation. However, we reckon that we know how to fix it. So this is my take on what we do exceptionally well. One is we create the informed customer. So we work with cities and clients to try and create that group that can work across currently silo type thinking to make it work. So for example, we're doing this in Belfast. We're creating the innovation team in Belfast. We did this in Dubai with the Ministry of Innovation, creating the team. We're doing it, we're just about to sign a contract, I hope, with Aberdeen to do something roughly similar. And this is, how do you actually create that team that can do this? Before joining the Catapult, I delivered the Gigabit Bristol program down in Bristol. And a lot of what the thinking has come out of what Bristol has is their innovation group. They've got this fantastic innovation group. Bristol punches so far above its weight, it's unbelievable. But they've done that because they've created a group that can actually conjure these problems, and they concentrate on just this. Equally, what I love about it is the fact that that group is a profit center. Their international and funding group is part of their city innovation group. So they operate pulling in money, which allows them to do a lot of the innovative stuff. And local government has really failed miserably in the last 10 years in the European funding and external funding type of approach. So what we're doing is we're creating that group. And I've actually jumped a slide. So jumping back to this slide. Lack of a customer, lacking capacities, public sector procurement practice just sucks. We all know it sucks. It's just that whole kind of gladiatorial public sector procurement practice really mitigates against anything that's lean, agile, and anything in that type of arena whatsoever. The only thing I would say is G-Cloud has helped tremendously. And I know Amazon's on G-Cloud, and I know some of your partners are on G-Cloud. That does give you the opportunity of going to a customer and say, go to G-Cloud, buy us off G-Cloud. You can either take us as a preferred supplier directly, or you can run a mini competition. So if you're not on G-Cloud, it's opening up again after being closed for about a year. Definitely get on it. It was specifically set up to allow SMEs to actually become part of the public sector procurement market. How many people are on G-Cloud? Well done. So are we, so is Amazon, so is a number of their partners. Get onto G-Cloud because it does give you the opportunity of going to a customer and saying, okay, you like what I've got, let's not think about OJU, let's not think about major procurement, just buy us off G-Cloud. It's hard though because the procurement guys hate G-Cloud because basically it's like turkeys voting for Christmas. They don't like complexity coming out of their organization. They don't like G-Cloud. And the IT companies use 20th century bridging model. I used to work for Microsoft, I used to work for EDS, I've sold into the public sector for a very long time. And one of the things that always irritates me is you actually go in with a vice president type conversation and it's all about strategic partnership and long-term this and long-term that. And then they incentivize the sales teams on monthly sales. It's a complete dysfunction between the rhetoric and the modus operandi of how IT companies work. I also know when I went to Microsoft and said to my boss, you say, okay, when's this coming in? And I'll say, oh, it could be 18 months, 2 years. I don't care. What are you selling this month? What do you actually got for this quarter? So the models they use currently don't work in the market. Equally the same with enterprise licensing and all that kind of stuff. I'll have to say Amazon, of course, Web Services doesn't do that, which is splendid. So a lot of it is the fault of the IT companies in particular, which is why I think it's not the IT companies that are going to lead this area, it's the architecture, engineering, and construction companies. So go and talk to your architecture, engineering, and construction companies, your Balfour Beatty and Costain and Bouillet and Bechtel and all these sort of guys, because basically they now know they need to bake all this in at the very beginning of the operation, not at some point further on. And they can bring in the telco, the utilities, the systems integrators, everybody else, as and when they actually need them. So get close to those guys. So we create the city innovation group. So we actually create the customer that can conjure these wicked issues and problems. And then, it's like when I went down to Bristol, the guy down in Bristol said, look, we put 60 million quid's worth of infrastructure in here. We have no idea who's using it or what difference it's making. I talk to so many cities or regions that are in the same boat. They put the infrastructure in, but they have not actually got any idea what success will look like or what the return on the investment is going to be. So we spend a lot of time with our insights group saying, okay, if you put this infrastructure in, what will people do differently? And it can be all sorts of different things. And then we have this fantastic group called our performance and use group, which is the econometrics team, which actually looks at if people do these things differently, then how can you measure that? And then can you put that back into the return on the investment? Give you a good example of this. Belfast. So we're working in Belfast. We went over to Belfast, and the way we actually do this is we go and we do run something called City Academy. And the City Academy this is such an immature market area, people just don't know what they don't know. They think smart cities is about parking or parking sensors or something like that. So we take the senior team through the best stuff we've seen globally, and it really gets them quite excited. Then we spend a lot of time going, well, okay, no one starts from scratch, so what are you already doing? And then we bundle that up into a roadmap. The thing about the roadmap bit is it's particularly useful because as for a client, you turn a strategy into a roadmap, then it says, okay, I know what I'm going to be doing over the next 3 years. But you flip a roadmap to the private sector, and it's a pipeline. As soon as they see a pipeline, they're willing to put money into this because they can say, okay, well, we can pitch for that then, and in 2 years' time, we can pitch for this, so we're interested in getting involved in this. So from the client perspective, it's very, very useful, that roadmap pipeline sort of flick piece. So we do that, and then we actually take them through the stuff that we can actually add to it, and then we have an engagement. And one of the things that Belfast came up with was they get to keep 50% off their business rates, and it makes up something like 47% of their income. They didn't know which buildings were going live in Belfast City. So they had 200 students going around every 6 months knocking on doors to find out if somebody was actually using the building. We were convinced that there must be a solution out in the marketplace, but I went around, there wasn't one, amazingly. So we're doing a proof of concept, a demonstration, and if you think from the elected member's point of view, this puts 2 million back straight into their budget immediately. And so it's a no-brainer. And on the back of sort of a monetary type thing like that, we can actually do some more esoteric things around how do you actually create social capital in a socially divided city through behavioral science. So there's 5 things we're actually doing in Belfast. That's an example of the sort of engagement we do. Find the monetary one or find the quantifiable one and then work through from there. We also have some really weird ones we have to work on, which is things like happiness, well-being, happiness, harmony. How do you measure well-being, happiness, and harmony? It's hard, but our performance and use team are actually attempting to do this. And in fact, Dubai came to us and said, we want to be the happiest city in 2030. And that was the end of the brief. So we then had to work out what the hell they meant, who's going to be happy, how do you measure that, and what difference is it going to make? But there we go. So that's the sort of 3-stage approach. And this is what we do well. So we're a small team. It's like 85 people. We're going up to 150. So if anyone's interested in the Catapult, go on our site and look at the jobs that are on offer. We do city strategies. And it's the city strategies stroke roadmap bit. And I really, really make a difference between strategy and a roadmap. You know, take something like Birmingham as a really wonderful example. Birmingham came out with a wonderful strategy about, I don't know, 2.5 years ago. I don't know, anyone seen it? It's about 4 inches thick. It's absolutely cracking. But they have absolutely no idea how to turn that strategy into doing something. So it's sat there for all that time without working it. We do future off. We're doing future of campuses, university campuses. Future of stations. How do you actually inculcate a station into your city? How do you inculcate the university? So we worked with Glasgow University on their £800 million development for their redevelopment in Glasgow. On the back of that, we've got the National University in Sharjah, is the one we're actually talking to currently. We do data tools, and I'm hoping you're going to come back to the second week, which begins 6th of March, because we're showing some of these demonstrations, projects that we're doing with these cities. And we do standards and benchmarking. So we have a City Standards Institute, which is looking at standards within cities, and it works with the British Standards Institute. We've got a couple of our colleagues here. Matt's at the back there, so he runs the City Standards Institute. And we do demonstrations, performance and use, and then the actual methodologies are city innovations, blah, blah, blah. You can read this anyway. We try and narrow it down to 9 things that we do well, because we can't do everything. And that's the other thing we do. We don't do stuff, right? We're there to actually prove that things work, and then we pass that on to the private sector. Our job is not to do things. We're government funded. We don't do stuff. It was explained to me by our commercial manager, which I thought was good. He said, think of the NASA Technology Maturity Index, which obviously I do every day. He said from 1 to 9, 1 being a good idea that someone's thought of, 9 being something that's actually available commercially in the marketplace and people buy. We do sort of 5, 6, and maybe 7. So we do the stuff that nobody else is doing. That's our job. Everyone following this so far? Yes. Obviously very early in the morning. It's a very quiet audience here. So some examples. City Standards Institute. We have, I think it's 9 companies, major companies, and SMEs, and we have 15 cities that are part of this, trying to put this together. And there's going to be a session on the City Standards Institute and what we're taking forward on this in the second week that we're doing at the beginning of March. There's a couple of examples. This is called Capstone. So we're actually looking at the legacy of the Queen Elizabeth Park, working with Intel, ICAS, and various others, to see what the legacy of that park could be, and particularly in terms of healthy cities. So we have 3 themes that we work on: healthy cities, infrastructure, and urban mobility. You may know there's a transport catapult. There's also a digital catapult. So we don't do technology. Sorry, we do technology, but only when technology is the right answer to doing something. And we don't do big, heavy transport. That's the transport catapult. What we do is how do people use transport? So the urban mobility bit, how they actually will move through cities or anything other. That's what we do. Dubai, I've already mentioned, we're our 5th contract in there. It's fascinating, and our guys have now got a big seminar coming up on happiness. How do you measure happiness? Have you got any ideas how to measure happiness? Is everybody happy? Can you measure it? And this is something we did with the GLA. So taking the information from London Datastore, we curated the London Operation Room for the Big Bang Data exhibition that was at Somerset House. If you go upstairs, say maybe at lunchtime, you'll be able to see this variation of this little machine here, which is basically using the data sets to make informed decisions. And this is where a lot of it's going. Everything's going from this sort of, and it's an IoT continuum from big data into information, into insight, into impact. So somewhere along that continuum, how can you make impactful decisions on basically the data that becoming information, giving you the insight? And that's one of the things we did. That thing on the right there is a sentiment map. It's basically a social media sentiment map in London that was in real time. So you could go around it and see who's happy in what parts of London. I live in Croydon. That was not happy at all, ever. But Knightsbridge was fine. And so I said, if you've got some time, please do wander around upstairs and look at the stuff that we're doing out there. It works. So let's go to my top 10 traits of successful cities. And you need to look for the right cities, because these are the cities who are going to be ready to buy stuff or actually do something. And if they don't have this, then you're basically stuffed. Ideally, you always start off with 1 being leadership. But in fact, you can have very, very competent, useful leadership that just does the stuff the same way it's always been done. That's not useful. You do need some kind of a focused maverick in that top position. The best is if you have a focused maverick type official and a focused maverick type politician. Bristol was brilliant at that when they had George Ferguson as their independent mayor. He was an architect. He understood the whole kind of smart city story. And then they had Stephen Hilton, who was leading the city innovation team. That was a perfect storm for getting stuff done. I would say Sheikh Mohammed in Dubai is a focused maverick. The guy who actually set up Singapore was a focused maverick. If you don't have one of those, then probably not much is going to happen. You need a dedicated team. So many of these types of places you go to, you'll actually be pushed to the director of transport or the director of environment or something. And this is something they do as a sideline. They don't really have time to think about it. It doesn't work. Follow the money. We just did a follow the money study globally. And interesting enough, it actually reflected what I thought it was going to tell us, which was there's something like $128 million currently being spent on things called smart cities. But the nomenclature they use is very old-fashioned. So if you look at the World Bank or the Asian Development Bank or the European Commission or anybody else, they're still using things like e-procurement, e-transport, e-health, e-government, etc. So anything with an E, if you put that back into the pot, there's 14 billion being spent currently on smart city projects. I used to work for an organization for government for the third millennium. We worked with 35 countries globally doing national government strategies, and what my job was to do was to triangulate what we were doing with where was the money and where was the interest. So if you go along to and you're doing your pitch to whomsoever, and they say, yes, we love it, we have no money, that's the usual response. And you go, I know where the money is, it's here, and this is how you get it. So understanding where the money is absolutely critical. And you can do that a UK way, you can do it a European, or you can do it globally. They have benchmarked, they know what they have. So many cities have no idea what they have in terms of infrastructure or anything else. So some cities do, not many do. They have created the underlying infrastructure. To me, the actual connectivity is the underlying infrastructure. You have no connectivity, you have nothing to build on. I get very irritated with some audiences because they say it's all about people and citizens and SMEs and technology is a bad thing, or we shouldn't talk about technology, etc. You don't have the technology, you've got nothing to build on. It is the basic underlying plumbing. So that's got to be in place too. Community is great. I love cities around the country and the world that actually have a real sense of community. I'm Scottish, so they always say Scots are perfectly balanced because they have a chip on both shoulders. Yeah. It's that idea of us against the world. And you know, Bristol's always had that, Glasgow has it, it's that Newcastle has it, it's that sense of us against everybody else, and us immediately against London. That's brilliant. You can really use that to make people do stuff. Exeter is another one down in the West Country. Cardiff. These people, they love their place. Find a reason to be part of the future. This is really, really important because cities grow up for a particular reason. And evolution says sometimes that changes. So if you don't find your place in the 21st century and you know what you're actually going to be doing with it, a very good example got off Aberdeen. I used to be the economic development director up in Aberdeen. It was oil and gas. That's what we did. Oil and gas and a bit of fishing. They know that the licenses, if the price per barrel drops for $12 per barrel, they're all out of there. Within 48 hours, all the oil companies have gone. Cat to wells, disappeared. Well, they do know that they've got sort of the globally world-leading health and safety around offshore drilling. They've taken that sort of middle stat concept from Germany of high-end engineering. So they have family high-end engineering type places. And you go into one of these industrial estates, and there's this huge machine, and it prints this little widget, and each widget's like 100,000 quid a widget. So that sort of stuff isn't quite so peripatetic, and that's what they're going to build on. They're going to build on the family engineering part of, or that's their strategy going forward. Leveraging the private sector. This really irritates me. When I moved from the public sector to the private sector, it's like you've gone to the dark side. I mean, I'm still a husband, I'm still a brother, I'm still, a son. I've got lots and lots of different identities that are just not private sector. Plus, I'm a very high taxpayer. So I've got major interest in making sure that government works. So bring in the private sector at all times to talk to you. Plus, at Microsoft, we had a $9 billion R&D budget. You want Microsoft to be actually, or Amazon, or Oracle, or anybody else, you want them spending their R&D budget on your challenges. So therefore, you bring them in early, and you make sure you get a bit of that R&D going into what you're doing. Do something. This is what I thought was great about Bristol. Basically, they just did it. They had a fantastic mayor, a fantastic chief exec, a fantastic city innovation lead, and they would take risks. They would just do it. And as soon as you do something, it's that kind of serendipitous bit that other people start joining in with you. They start giving you money. In Bristol, we had a particular project around the city data visualization center in the planetarium. It was sexy, it was great, and so people were going, well, we've got no great ideas, but we've got money. Can we put our logo on your whatever it is, and here's a big wad of money. So do stuff, and it starts building that momentum. And measure the difference. If you can't measure the difference, then why are you doing it? You have to be able to measure the difference, because at some point, someone's going to ask you, why are we doing this? So measuring the difference. If you find cities that can do this, and I know quite a few that can, then those are the ones you should be actually targeting. Top 10 mistakes that people normally make in this market. The first is they think they're going to sell something quickly. You're not. You really, really aren't. So you're in there for the long haul. If you don't actually, so don't think. I always get these sorts. The new senior VP for smart cities will come through the door and they'll sit down and go, great, that's fantastic. So you're selling this, good. So do you have an investment fund? No. Do you have targets for this year? Yes. I would suggest you start looking for your next position. They think there's a customer. You've actually got to make the customer or find the customer. There's not an immediate one anywhere. No investment money, as I just mentioned it there. You think they have every company that comes through this door think they have a unique offer. You don't. There is pretty much any number of companies I can think of that are offering something similar. So you have to actually, there's got to be more effort into what you do about building the relationship part of the sell as opposed to the straightforward technology bit of it. Bore the clients with the city deck. Again, I see all these people going, cities are important. Many people are moving to cities. Cities have bad air quality, etc. That's sold. It's gone. That train has disappeared ages ago. They know this. So you get straight to what you are going to be able to do about these challenges, not tell them something they're already aware of. So that kind of, cities are important thing is really, really boring. No references. If you've got no references, it's very, very hard sell. Because particularly local government, etc., they want to phone somebody up and say, how did that go? Was it good? You need to buy, borrow, invest in some kind of a reference to make you see when you're actually working. Chasing the same cities. This is one of the biggest mistakes everyone makes. So I say, so smart city lead comes in and say, yes, so what's your, what are you looking at? Oh, we're looking at Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, Glasgow, London, etc. Everyone's chasing the same people or the same cities. It's like chasing the best looking girl on the dance floor. What's the point? Go and find somebody who's a little bit more interesting and smaller with a real sense of community, who can make decisions quickly, rather than all go chasing the same ones. So go after Sunderland or Newcastle, the UK sort of thing. We're just being pinged by Armagh and Lisbon in Northern Ireland. Those are the sort of places you go for, because big sense of community, decision making quickly, it kind of works. In Bristol, they have something called the first Friday. The first Friday of every month, there is a pub called the Waterfront, and it's like open house, open mic, between 4 and 6. And everybody who you'd want to talk to pitches up there, from industry, from academic, from government, etc. And you can get everybody in the same room and do everything you need to do. And it's open, it's entirely open, there's no invites whatsoever. That's the kind of city you need to have that kind of conversation. Leverage the private sector. As I said, one of the things when I talk to a public sector audience, I usually say this is kind of difficult because no one's making any money. And you can see them all nodding. And I'm going, no, it's a really bad idea. Because if no one's making any money, they're going to go do something else. You want them concentrating on your challenges. So you need to give opportunities. It's enlightened self-interest to make opportunities for sales for the public-private sector. Oh, think IT is the fix. There's a question that we always use as sort of sanity checking within the Catapult, which is, if technology is the answer, what was the question? It is an answer. It is something that can facilitate something, but it is never the answer. It doesn't work that way. And unable to articulate the ROI of your proposition. We have been working, from the Catapult point of view, with at least 3 major corporates who have asked us to come up with what is the return on the investment of putting their kit in. It's amazing to me that they actually didn't know already, but very, very many don't know what the return on the investment is going to be. You're all very quiet. Right. And this is an external view. It's not an Amazon view. I used to be a chief analyst for public sector for Ovum as well, so this is the sort of thing I used to do. And this is kind of like a snapshot of the people that are coming through. There's all sorts of weird people coming into this marketplace, like Lockheed Martin, ex-big defense operation. They have the most wonderful cyber-secure IoT systems that they used to put into warships and submarines, etc. But they know there's no more warships and submarines coming down the line, so now they start looking to the sort of civilian marketplace. You've got people like, do you know McLaren F1 is in the smart city space? So McLaren F1 has got 1,422 sensors that you can use in the car, and they can play with it at 200 miles an hour. And I went down to their office. They've got fantastic. They actually go to the managing director. Every year, they start with a new car. So they just have a board, and they have to take 3 seconds off the lap time of the last car. That's it. That's the thing they aim for. So they've got fantastic IP, and what they've been working with Birmingham City Hospital, putting the McLaren F1 sensor technologies into the ambulance trolley things, so they can actually monitor the health of the. So everybody is looking at this space. So there's all sorts of interesting. I think that Amazon. Oh, hang on, it's fallen off. This wasn't the one I was doing last night. So, is incredibly high in terms of innovation and change. What we need to know are more cities that are actually working on the Amazon Web Service platform, as far as I'm concerned. So this is what the good bit is. And I think that's it.